why that has enabled those children who enter the vocational stream at secondary level in China get jobs, while those who acquire merely general academic education don't, or not so easily. But before I say anything about China, let me just give you remind you of the reality that you as both parents as well as principals are aware of. All the parents who send their children to your schools dream of sending their children to the best medical schools, to IITs, to the IIMs, to the National Law School, and so on and so forth. You and I know that in any education system, elite universities and elite higher education institutions of the kind that I've just mentioned, IIMs, IITs, the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, are very small in number. When the government tries to expand their number very quickly, as it has during the 11th five-year plan, we run up against a very serious bottleneck of not being able to find the teachers, so that those 7 new IITs and the new 7 IIMs don't have the quality and the reputation and the credibility that the older ones do. Why? Because you just can't find the teachers so quickly, and you cannot replicate high-quality institutions across the country. Nowhere in the world do you have a very large number of high-quality educational institutions. You know, there are only some 10 or so Ivy League universities in the US. The rest of the US higher education system consists of community colleges and private colleges and state universities and so on, which is where most of the children go. So, you know, that's what's going to continue to happen. So let's not suddenly believe that, you know, and parents should stop believing that their children all will end up in IIT Kanpur or IIT Delhi or IIT Mumbai, which is the hope. You know, you read every front page paper today, you are looking at, oh, so many crores, so many hundreds of thousands of dollars being offered to the IIT walas. You know, 99.9% of the children are not being offered that. So what are those children going to do? Are we preparing them for the kinds of, you know, skills that Dilip and Sanjeev were talking about? So what are those skills? They spoke about 3 types of skills, actually. One, cognitive, which, you know, all of you teach. All of us have grown up in the school system where you're becoming literate and you become numerate and you acquire general academic skills because you learn general academic subjects. But most of the time, unfortunately, our school system, even the best school systems, are not teaching non-cognitive skills which are called transversal skills. In other words, which cut across jobs, which cut across any kind of activity you might be engaged in for the rest of your life. What are those kinds of skills? They're also called by another term called soft skills. Communication skills is one thing. When your children leave your school system or they enter university, and from that they go to a job, our employers are repeatedly telling us that, you know, these children just don't know how to communicate with each other, let alone communicate with their superiors or with their colleagues. So question is, are we teaching them that? Another soft skill is supposed to be computer skills. It's a transversal skill across all sectors. That's being taught everywhere increasingly. Very good. But let me ask you about yet another skill, which our children sang about in the morning today. If you heard carefully the words that they were singing, I want to recall for you 2 lines. Sanghatit hokar chalein, ek hokar chalein. You know, when I hire people into an institution that I head, I look for people who know what it is to get along with other people. I'm looking for people who can work with a team, work in a team, know how it is to give and take within a team. Because if you have sort of not been brought up and in school you have not been taught teamwork skills. You will come to university thinking, I have to achieve this, I have to get that job, and once I get that job, I'm going to be boss and king. And I'm not going to listen to anyone, or I'm not going to be, even talk decently to other people. Just talk decently to other people. Communication, going back to communication skills. So if you were to be inculcating habits of teamwork, that itself is a huge, huge innovation. But let me come back to my main and substantive point, which is about the possibility of introducing vocational skills in the schools that you are heading. Because 4 years ago, it was not even possible in our country to actually introduce in class 9 a vocational stream. Thankfully, thanks to the Ministry of Human Resource Development decision to actually take our advice on the National Vocational Education Qualification Framework, we insisted that in class 9, children must be offered a vocational stream, which is what Dilip was talking about. The MHRD now has a new scheme, at least in the Sarkari schools. But it can't just be in the CBSE or in the Sarkari schools. It needs to be in the private schools. I understand there are many private schools represented here. Because, children are, of course, parents are sending their children to private schools, but, it's not as though even those children, despite the best education, are necessarily getting into the IITs, IIMs, and National Law School. So even they need to acquire not just these transversal skills I was talking about, but also vocational skills. Because this country needs all levels of skills. And if all levels of skills are not being provided by our school system, then we will have to increasingly only rely upon Centum, and such institutions. They're doing a great job, and NSDC is doing a great job. But the backbone of this, of vocational education, needs to be the school system. That's the way it is in China. Let me say a few words about China before I close. All children who complete 9 years of compulsory education in China have to take an exam. Once they take that exam, they get streamed into general academic and into vocational. I want to tell you that in our country, till 3-4 years ago, and even now till in the vast majority of our schools, you can get into a vocational stream only in class 11. And the quality of that education is so poor that children are not employable, and that is a very important reason why vocational is not regarded highly. If the quality is poor, then the children and the parents are not going to be encouraged to enter. So let me come back to the China situation. Only 3% of our children at class 11, or 5% maximum recently, of the relevant age cohort were entering vocational education. In China, it's half. Half of all children who complete 9 years of academic education enter vocational. And they all get jobs, I'm talking about China, they all get jobs, while that's not necessarily the case for those who enter general academic education. So there must be something to it. There is a learning, there ought to be a learning here. And let me make just one other point about the Chinese system, which is the following, that of the 3 years that those children who enter the vocational stream, that they remain in vocational education, because it's classes 10, 11, and 12. 9 years of compulsory, then 10, 11, and 12 is how the senior secondary is called. They spend, those kids who are in the vocational stream, they spend 2 years in school, and in the last year they spend it in industry. That potential and that possibility does not even exist in our country. So there is in other words, there is we are hoping that there is an expectation and a requirement that industry is willing and able to actually provide this possibility and collaborate with the state and with school system to actually enable something similar to happen. Because one of the other things that our employers are complaining about is the following, that whatever vocational education or training our ITIs or even our school systems are providing, there's no practical training involved. There's no hands-on exposure to actually industry or work environment involved. There's been no internship involved before they come into a work environment. A real issue. So, first, let me close by saying the school system and the principals need to internalize the logic of why vocational skills have to be offered, and be offered areas obviously which are high in demand. So in other words, there's a requirement upon principals and the school system to do some market surveys in the areas where they are located to understand where is the demand. Secondly, there is a requirement upon industry to be willing to offer themselves beyond what Dilip was saying. They're very important and very interesting work that's going on under the aegis of the skills councils and the providers like Centum and other providers that NSDC is funding. But on a larger scale, it's required that you as leaders of the school system reach out to local industry, reach out to local sector skills councils, reach out to industry associations to see whether they are willing to provide internships in the courses that you are now beginning to hopefully offer. So these are tangible things that you may want to think a little bit further about, because I want to close and remind you by saying that not all your children, no matter how good your schools are going to be able to enter the IITs, the Indian School of Business, or the IIMs. Thank you very much.